Hi everyone, my name is Whitney Porter. I am the scheduling coordinator with NJ4S Union Hub. Today we will be having a presentation by Rachael Scarinci, and she will be talking about what is neurodivergence today. A little bit about Rachael. Rachael is a prevention consultant for the NJ4S Union Hub. She is a proud first generation graduate student who will be graduating with her MPH in Global Public Health next summer. During her undergraduate years, Rachael obtained her Bachelor of Science in Public Health, along with a double minor in Science Communication and Emergency Public Health Preparedness. She is passionate about educating others on preventative strategies to raise awareness and better their well-being. Ultimately, she enjoys empowering others by giving them the tools and guidance necessary to tackle challenges confidently and autonomously. One of Rachael's favorite stories is about the lotus flower. It grows from muddy waters but always emerges untouched and pristine. We are all lotus flowers constantly being reborn through mud. It is up to us to wash away the dirt and blossom into the beautiful flower we are. Rachael finds joy in watching Formula One races every weekend, working on cars, golfing with her grandmother, playing video games, and tending to her plant while her cat, Mystic, helps. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Rachael.
As Whitney said, today I'm going to be discussing what exactly neurodivergence is. So our table of contents, just some topics that we're going to discuss today: the introduction to neurodivergence, the types of neurodivergence. We're going to discuss the cognitive and behavioral traits, some historical context. We're going to dive into the biological and genetic factors behind neurodivergence. We are going to talk about diagnosis and assessment for these conditions. Then we're going to dive into support and accommodations and future directions. So what exactly is neurodivergence? Neurodivergence refers to when someone's brain processes, learns, and/or behaves differently from what is considered typical. It is a variety of ways that the brain works differently. Neurodiversity celebrates the richness of human cognitive variation and highlights the positive insights and abilities that can arise from these differences. So being neurodivergent simply means that having a brain that functions uniquely is not necessarily a disability. It's part of a beautiful tapestry of the human mind. So types of neurodivergence. The first one we're going to talk about today is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD. This is a mental health condition characterized by a combination of persistent challenges, including difficulty paying attention, hyperactivity, and impulsive behavior. So some symptoms of ADHD may be difficulty focusing, being hyperactive, having impulsive behavior, and if it's left untreated, these symptoms can lead to unstable relationships, poor work performance, and low self-esteem. So how these symptoms might look can be different to each individual, and as we continue talking about each type of neurodivergence, again, they're still unique and individualized to every person. So difficulty focusing, that could be in school, in work, maybe even on daily tasks. Hyperactivity could be restlessness or always fidgeting, maybe having a difficulty staying still. And then impulsive behavior is going to look like acting without thinking, interrupting others, and making hasty decisions. So some strengths of an individual who has ADHD is that they tend to be very creative. They have a lot of high energy and they have the ability to multitask very well. But some challenges that they face is, again, impulsivity. They have difficulty staying and paying attention, and they might also have organization issues. So this could look like maybe organizing your schedule for the week, or even organizing your schedule for the day. Maybe keeping their room organized could be an issue. Even at school, if you're younger and you either have a child in middle school, or if you notice that you did this in middle school. I had like a desk in middle school, and my desk was always a mess. I don't have ADHD, but I just remember them talking to me about my organization issues. So yeah, that's something that it might look like. The next is dyslexia, and this is actually something that I have, and my mom was born with dyslexia. My mom has a very mild form of dyslexia, so my dyslexia is even more mild than my mom's. But dyslexia is a language-based learning disability that affects the ability to decode and recognize words, leading to difficulties in reading, spelling, and writing. Often misconception with dyslexia is that we can see the words and the letters moving. It's not necessarily so much that for me, and again, this looks different for everyone. But when my dyslexia is more so, I'll see a word arranged a certain way, but I know the word doesn't say that. So like, say I was reading the word Wall Street, it might look like walrus to me, but I know reading the sentence that they wouldn't be talking about a walrus if I was reading like a financial paper. So my dyslexia, I'm kind of able to tackle it in a different form, whereas someone who has like a more severe form of dyslexia, they might not have, the same way of understanding things that I do. So some symptoms of dyslexia: you will have difficulty pronouncing words correctly. You have difficulty reading. There are challenges with spelling and writing, and you struggle to connect letters to the corresponding sounds. And strengths: someone who has dyslexia, their strengths is that they're strong problem-solving individuals. They're very creative, and they have the ability to think outside of the box. Someone who has dyslexia might face challenges again with reading and spelling. Difficulty with phonological processing is the awareness and understanding that spoken words are made up of sounds, and recognizing how they come together form a word. So you're going to have issues with that processing. Dyspraxia is the next type of neurodivergence that we're going to talk about. It is a chronic neurodevelopmental issue that affects motor skills and coordination. So some symptoms of this might look like difficulty performing fine and gross motor skills. So a fine motor skill is going to look like writing, using utensils like a fork or a spoon or a knife, and then tying shoelaces would be another type of fine motor skill. Gross motor skills, those are going to use more muscle groups, so like playing sports, jumping, or trying to balance. Some other symptoms might be struggling with coordination, which can impact the ability to make precise movements. Some challenges that an individual with dyspraxia might face is the difficulty with their motor skills. They might also be challenged with organization issues, difficulty with attention and memory, or they might have sensory differences. Sensory differences can look like a form of avoidance. So, for example, you might leave a very noisy room, or someone with sensory differences might fidget a lot more. So they would use like a fidget toy. I actually have one with me right here. I got this on Amazon. It's amazing. I've had it since I was in high school, and it's just a fidget cube, but it has all these different like buttons that click and make noises. This is like a wheel that spins. There's like this ball, and there's a light switch, a little joystick. So like I don't have, I've never been diagnosed with sensory issues, but I do have difficulties paying attention and focusing. So this like really helps me. So someone with dyspraxia, again, their sensory differences could look like either avoidance, or maybe they just need something to focus. It's also called stimming. And then strengths of someone with dyspraxia, they're going to be very creative. They're going to have an empathic sense about them, meaning that they can really sense the emotions of others and feel those emotions. And then they're also going to be able to think outside of the box. Tourette syndrome is the next one we're going to dive into. This is a neurological disorder characterized by involuntary movements or sounds called tics. And tics vary. They can look totally different depending on the person. So some symptoms of Tourette syndrome, there are motor or vocal tics. Motor tics are going to be some kind of like physical movement, whereas a vocal tic is going to obviously be your voice. And then depending on if you have motor or vocal tics, some individuals have both. They can be simple tics, which is a limited number of muscle groups. So this might be blinking a lot. I know some people like lick their lips. It could be shoulder shrugging. I know some people snap. So those are forms of simple tics, whereas a complex tic is going to be coordinated patterns using multiple muscle groups. So this is going to be like repeating words. I know this one girl on TikTok, she has Tourette syndrome, and she's very outspoken about like recording herself and kind of like sharing her experience with people, so that she can raise awareness to it. And one of her tics is whenever she sees someone bald, it causes her to tic, and she doesn't know why, but she has this like repetitive word that she says when she sees a bald person. So that is a form of repeating words for a complex tic. Even sometimes like in a conversation, someone might say something, and if one of those words in the conversation triggers a tic with someone who has Tourette's, again, that could cause them to repeat words. Touching objects and jumping. Again, sometimes there are like when you have Tourette syndrome and you are, there's things called tic attacks, which is when you are feeling the urge to tic constantly. And I feel like the best way to describe how a tic feels to someone who doesn't have Tourette syndrome is like scratching an itch. For, imagine you were doing something with your hands. Like for me, when I'm getting my nails done, if my nose starts to itch, or if like I have a scratch on my face, I can't get it because my hands are getting done. But once you're able to scratch, you're like, wow, that felt so great. So a tic is similar to an itch. They feel this urge inside of their body to tic, and they have the ability to prevent the tics from happening, but then it builds up to the point where they have a tic attack and they're unable to stop ticking. So some people, it's easier for them to just tic as they feel the urge, because it's scratching the itch as it comes, and then some individuals will just put it off. Someone who has Tourette's, their strengths, they're going to be very creative. They'll be very focused on their interests, and they're very resilient individuals. Some challenges that someone with Tourette syndrome might face is the tics, again, that I was talking about before. Unfortunately, there is a social stigma because not many people understand Tourette syndrome, and especially because they don't have an understanding when they see it for the first time, their first exposure to it, they don't know how to handle it, or they might not even know what it is. So unfortunately, people are still faced with social stigma today, but that is changing. They are facing difficulties with attention and learning. And then there's also physical discomfort because, again, imagine having an itch that you just wanted to scratch all day long. We would also be in physical discomfort. And then the last form of neurodivergence that I'm going to talk about today is autism spectrum disorder, also known as ASD. This is a developmental disorder that affects communication, behavior, and social interaction. People with ASD may have challenges in understanding social cues, expressing themselves, and forming relationships. So some symptoms of this, there are going to be social challenges that come with this. Social challenges could be difficulty with social interactions, such as making eye contact, understanding nonverbal cues, and forming friendships. Communication difficulties. Um, this might just be maybe a symptom of this for communication difficulties would be they just need plain language, or sometimes when things are being explained to us, sometimes pictures are a good way to explain if we're not able to make the words more simple. Another symptom is going to be repetitive behavior, the sensory sensitivities that I had discussed before, and other symptoms such as anxiety, depression, mood swings, difficulty with changes in routine, or unusual motor skills. Some strengths of someone with ASD is that they have a lot of attention to detail, they have pattern recognition, and they have an intense focus on specific interests. Some challenges that they face are difficulties with social communication, sensory sensitivities, and repetitive behaviors. So now we're going to talk about cognitive and behavioral traits. So oftentimes neurodivergent individuals are uniquely gifted, and this giftedness brings a lot of strengths to all of them, regardless of their individual diagnosis. The giftedness that comes along with being neurodivergent is that you have high intellectual abilities, you have a deep curiosity, and you're able to rapidly learn. But some challenges that gifted individuals face is perfectionism, social isolation, and asynchronous development. Perfectionism is definitely something that I face, like with my own challenges. But asynchronous development, this was necessarily something that was more so of a challenge before COVID, because we didn't know how to transition into a fully online world. And after COVID, the asynchronous development really helped a lot of neurodivergent individuals, but we will talk about that a little bit later. Sensory processing sensitivity. So this isn't necessarily a disorder, but it is a part of neurodiversity. Some strengths of having a sensory processing sensitivity is that you have a heightened awareness of your sensory inputs and you become very empathetic. Again, this is feeling other people's emotions and, being able to take them on yourself. And some challenges that they're faced with is that they might be overwhelmed with noisy or bright environments, and there's a strong emotional intensity that comes with sensory processing sensitivity. So some historical context, the neurodiversity movement emerged in the 1990s, and this was a call for acceptance and inclusion of all people celebrating neurological differences. There are many diverse ways of thinking and experiencing the world, and this really shifted the conversation away from calling neurological differences deficits. And then in 2010, the concept of neurodiversity had really gained public importance. So right here is Judy Singer. She's also known as the mother of neurodiversity. She is the individual who coined the term neurodiversity. Back in 1998, she was writing a thesis that laid the groundwork for the neurodiversity movement, and she really emphasized embracing cognitive diversity rather than pathologizing it. And this is going to be when you're treating someone differently based on their non-normative behavior or characteristics as if they had a mental disorder. And we know neurodiversity is not a mental disorder, other than it's more so a way that each individual uniquely lives their life in this world. My picture is not showing here, but another notable individual in historical context is Emma Watson from the Harry Potter film series. She was diagnosed with ADHD at 5 years old, and she was filming the Harry Potter series, during that whole time of her childhood. So she was faced with a lot of challenges, both on and off screen, when with her diagnosis, and she remains very open about her story, and this is to normalize the condition, help break down any stigmas, and help others understand neurodiversity. And then this individual is Dan Harmon, or Harmon. He's also the individual who made Rick and Morty, and he was a creator for the show Community. He was developing a character for the show Community, and it wasn't until he was developing this character that it led him to go for an evaluation. And he was actually diagnosed with Asperger's at 36. So imagine living your life normally, and it is a normal life, but imagine living your life normally, and it wasn't until he had some exposure to a neurodivergent individual. In this case, it was a character for a show, but it wasn't until he had that exposure and had done that research that he realized he had traits about himself that lined up with this character he was creating. And if it wasn't for that, he might have never had an evaluation done. And now that he knows that he has autism spectrum disorder, he is able to accommodate himself a lot better, and he understands himself. Honestly, his story was really interesting to hear about. And while Rick and Morty isn't about neurodivergence, the character Rick exhibits a lot of traits associated with neurodivergence. And these are, again, all celebrities, all people that are very creative individuals, which show the strengths that we had talked about before. But they were also still faced with challenges, and it's just great that they're able to raise some awareness and show their stories. So now we're going to dive into the biological and genetic factors. So neurodivergence is hereditary. Research suggests that genetic factors play a significant role in neurodivergence. Many conditions such as autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, and specific learning disabilities have a hereditary component. And they have a polygenic nature as well. So neurodivergent conditions like autism spectrum disorder and ADHD usually involve many different genes working together. So the best way to think of this is like a recipe that needs many ingredients to create a specific dish. So knowing neurodivergent conditions are influenced by many genes, there are susceptibility genes, and this just increases someone's likelihood of developing a condition, but it doesn't guarantee that someone will have a condition. It only makes them more likely. So imagine this, you're building a house and each gene is like a different material needed to build a house. So, if you were making the foundation, you would probably need to pour concrete. When you're building the walls, you need wood, then you need insulation for the inside. The roof is a certain material, you need glass for the windows. Try and think of all of your genes inside of you as these building materials. Having one material wouldn't be enough, right? You could make a concrete house, but then you would have no windows. You could build a wooden home, but then, what about the elements of the weather? We need all of these things to build a house, and we also need all of the genes inside of us to make us who we are. So again, you need multiple materials in order to complete the home. So similarly, for neurodivergent conditions, it's not just one gene, but a combination of many that together increase the likelihood of developing a condition. So now we're going to dive into diagnosis and assessment. The diagnostic criteria, typically clinical evaluations by a healthcare professional will be able to determine a diagnosis. There are criteria and diagnostic manuals for identifying a condition. I learned about that probably back when I was in high school. I took a psychology course, and I forget the title of the book that the professionals use, the diagnostic manual, but I think it's like the DSM-5 was what we were using, and that those are just diagnostic manuals for identifying conditions. Screening tools are also used to help identify potential neurodivergence, and doctors will interview the parents and teachers and the individual to gain more information about the situation. Psychological testing assesses one's cognitive abilities, memory, attention, and executive functions. Genetic testing assesses one's genetic makeup for any potential differences in the code. So again, this is talking back to the house analysis that I was making. We have all of these genes that make us who we are, and genetic testing is a really good way to, see any potential differences. And then diagnosis can occur at any stage in life, like what we saw with Dan Harmon, the creator of Rick and Morty. But the earlier the diagnosis, the better the outcome for the individual. Again, just hearing Dan's story was very fascinating to me because, maybe these were things that he was struggling with when he was younger in school, and he just didn't know because that's his way of normal. And he could have been accommodated when he was younger, but now he's being accommodated later. So it's just, I love this story so much. So support and accommodations, again, I was just talking about that, and we're going to dive into this. So individualized support is huge, acknowledging that support varies for each person. So this would be tailoring interventions, accommodations, and learning strategies to their specific profile, preferences, and goals, and provide personalized assistance in areas like education, work, and daily life. So flexible work arrangements, again, this was something that was more difficult before COVID, but ever since COVID happened and we had to switch to that online world, it's been a lot easier because now we have these systems in place that have been working. So flexible work arrangements just offer flexible schedules, remote work options, or adjusted hours to accommodate different needs. Some individuals might have a compressed work week, which allows them more time to recover. And then the more breaks or quiet spaces can help for sensory regulation if they do have to be on site. And job sharing reduces workload and allows them to focus on their strengths. So say you have two individuals working for you that are both neurodivergent, you can take both of their strengths and have them work on a task together. It's a great way for them to, build camaraderie together, but also feel good about themselves and the work that they're doing. Sensory-friendly environments are a really good way to accommodate neurodivergent individuals. So this would look like minimizing sensory overload by creating calm spaces that are less bright than traditional environments. We can also consider noise reduction, comfortable seating, and visual cues. And fidgeting toys, like I was talking about before, these are great for focusing. They're sometimes when we're paying attention, it's called stimming, and it's something you don't even recognize that you're doing to pay attention. Like sometimes when I'm in a meeting, I catch myself playing with my hair like this, or I'll be, I don't know, doing like something, and we all just have our own way of kind of paying attention. But fidget toys, having them around the office space would be a really good way to add to the sensory-friendly environment. Create clear communication channels. So use straightforward language that is easier to understand. I was kind of talking about this before with like clear lines of communication. So instead of saying we need to optimize our workflow to enhance productivity, you could say we need to find ways to work faster and get more done. It means the same thing, but it's more straightforward language that's easier to understand. Or you could use visual tools to complement the verbal communication. So for example, say you're asking them to water the flowers. You could show them a picture. Step 1, pour water into the watering can, and then step 2, pour the watering can onto the plant. That's a good way to add some compliments. You can even do vision boards or flow charts. Those are also good options, or good visual options. And future directions. So just be an ally. Avoid assumptions. Instead, focus on a shared understanding with individuals. Use clear communication, like I was talking about before. Remain flexible in a work or school environment so that we can be as accommodating as possible. Ask for their preferences. This is huge. This is so important. We don't know how we can accommodate someone unless we ask what they need from us. So please ask for their preferences. And most importantly, overall, accept neurodiversity and everyone's individual way of living life. So other than that, that's everything I have. I want to thank you for this amazing topic, and I'm so glad that I got to shed light on this today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for this awesome presentation. Um, So I just want to say thank you again for joining us for this amazing presentation. And thank you again to Rachel for that wonderful presentation. It was very informative and eye-opening, just a good reminder to be aware of the differences of people around us. If you enjoyed this presentation and want to keep up with what NJ4S is doing in the community, you can follow us on social media at NJ4S Union. That's NJ, the number 4S Union. And if you have any questions about our programming, you can email us at NJ, the number 4S Union at preventionlinks.org. Thank you again for joining us and have a great rest of your day.